Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a question I think a lot of you are probably thinking about. How can you make your money work harder for you?
Mm-hmm.
We're diving into passive income, basically exploring ways to earn money with, less ongoing effort than your typical 9 to 5.
Right. Things like rental properties, maybe, or stock dividends, even online courses people set up.
Exactly. Income streams that, well, they can offer more financial flexibility, maybe more security too,
Yeah.
especially with how the work world is changing.
Absolutely. And it's a really timely discussion. The whole nature of work seems to be shifting, doesn't it? Making these diverse income streams feel less like a luxury and more, well, essential for long-term financial health.
So to help us navigate all this, we've got some interesting sources lined up. We'll be unpacking Investopedia's 25 best passive income ideas to make money in 2025. It's a pretty comprehensive list.
Yeah, it looks quite detailed. And we're also going to draw on some core ideas from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, especially how it talks about assets, liabilities,
Yeah.
and really the mindset you need for building wealth.
Right. So our mission today isn't just to read off a list.
No, definitely not.
We want to explore the potential of these passive income ideas, get a feel for the realities involved,
Uh-huh.
and connect it all back to that fundamental financial thinking you find in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The goal is to give you some really actionable insights.
Exactly. Let's
Now-
try and make it practical.
Okay, let's get down to brass tacks then. What exactly are we talking about when we say passive income? Investopedia's basic definition is money earned from sources that don't need significant ongoing time or effort.
Right. And they give examples like rental income, stock dividends, earnings from digital content like courses.
Yeah, the usual suspects.
But it's worth noting, for this particular article, Investopedia uses a slightly, let's say, broader brush. They include things that might take a lot of work up front, but then become more minimal day to day. And they also lump in portfolio income, returns from stocks and bonds under this sort of passive umbrella for the article's purpose.
Which is an important little distinction, isn't it? Especially when you think about the IRS definition for taxes.
Exactly. The IRS is much more specific. They generally don't count things like interest, dividends, annuities, or most royalties as passive income unless it's directly from your main business operations.
So for tax stuff, those stock dividends Investopedia mentions, they'd usually be portfolio income, not passive income.
Correct. And that difference highlights a really key point that financial expert Cheng makes in the Investopedia piece. You have to understand the initial costs, whether that's time, money, or both. It's critical for any passive income idea. The word passive can be a bit misleading if you ignore the upfront work involved.
Yeah, it's definitely not always set it and forget it from day one. There's often that build-up phase. Okay, so let's dig into some of these 25 ideas from Investopedia. They group some as high potential, starting with real estate and the sharing economy. The first one that jumped out at me was premium space sharing. What's that about?
Well, it's interesting. It uses platforms like Store at My House, and the idea is monetizing like specialized, underused spaces you might have. Think climate-controlled wine cellars, maybe secure art storage. Okay.
So not just renting out a spare room.
Exactly. It's targeting a niche market that needs very specific conditions, and they're often willing to pay a premium for it. Security, climate control.
Makes sense for certain locations or properties, but what are the practical things someone needs to think about?
Well, Investopedia flags a few key things. You'd need good monitoring systems for temperature, humidity, whatever's needed. Proper insurance is crucial, especially for high-value items. You'd need solid legal contracts covering access, liability, and probably investing in major security. Plus, success might mean networking with, say, art handlers or wine collectors.
Right, building connections in that niche. Okay, interesting. Another high potential one, solar farm leasing. This sounds pretty hands-off if you have the land.
It can be, yeah. Basically, utility companies or solar developers lease larger plots of land for solar panels. It provides a long-term, pretty stable income.
And what kind of income are we talking?
The article suggests anywhere from maybe $500 up to $4,000 per acre per year. It depends on the project size and location, of course. And the leases are long, often 25 years plus for big utility farms, maybe 15, 20 for smaller community solar projects.
Wow, 25 years is a long commitment. What else should landowners consider?
Well, besides just having enough land, it needs to fit certain criteria. Generally flat, good sun exposure, ideally near existing power lines.
Makes sense.
And yeah, the long lease term is a big factor. You need to think about how it impacts future land use or resale value. Though Investopedia does mention potential property tax benefits sometimes. Good contracts usually cover how the land gets restored afterwards, too.
Okay. So needing significant acreage rules it out for many people. What about just, regular real estate investing?
Yeah.
Buying a property to rent out, that's the classic one, right?
It absolutely is. Investopedia mentions potential monthly rent, maybe $1,000 to $2,500 per property. And the upsides are potentially strong long-term returns from rent and the property value going up.
Uh-huh.
Plus diversification for your investments, and it can act as a hedge against inflation.
But as anyone who's been a landlord knows, passive isn't always the word that springs to mind.
Huh, true. It often requires work. Key things for success. Investopedia stresses thorough market research. Know the local trends, demand, property details.
Yeah.
Diversifying maybe across different property types or areas helps manage risk. And building good relationships with agents, property managers that can be vital for handling the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, outsourcing the headaches.
Exactly. And like most investments, you generally need a long-term view to really see the benefits. And of course, there's the option of renting out part of your own home. Short-term, like Airbnb, they suggest maybe $100 and $300 a day potential. Or long-term, that $5,000, $2,500 a month range again.
Right. The sharing economy definitely opened that up more.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there were more niche ideas, like specialty vehicle storage for RVs and boats.
Yeah, exactly. With RVs getting more popular and HOAs often restricting where you can park them. Providing secure storage can actually be pretty profitable, maybe $100 to $500 a month, they suggest. And you can charge more for covered spots or places with electrical hookups.
Interesting. We also saw wind farm leasing on the list. Sounds a bit like the solar farm idea.
It does share similarities. Utilities lease land for turbines. Compensation can be quite good, maybe $4,000 to $8,000 per turbine annually, or based on capacity, like $3,000 to $7,000 per megawatt.
Okay.
Leases are very long again, 30 to 50 years typically. A big plus is that farming can often continue around the turbines.
Oh, that's a key difference from solar, maybe.
Can be, but again, you need significant land, a good wind assessment, and you have to consider the visual and noise impact.
Got it. And then just rounding out this section, Investopedia mentions simply renting out items you already own, like tools, sports gear, using online platforms.
Yeah, that's a flexible way to make some cash from things just sitting there. Platforms make it easier to find renters, reach more people, and there might be tax benefits related to maintaining those items too.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Moving to the investment and finance category. Also marked high potential. First up, bonds and bond funds. These are usually seen as safer than stocks, right?
Generally, yes. They offer more predictable income through interest payments and more capital preservation usually. But the potential returns are typically lower than stocks. And there's interest rate risk. If rates go up, existing bond values can fall. Plus, credit risk, the chance the issuer defaults, especially with lower-rated bonds. Investopedia suggests diversifying, maybe laddering maturities, and sticking to higher-quality bonds to lessen those risks.
Makes sense. Okay, next. Dividend-paying stocks, regular income payouts.
Exactly. Annual yields often in the 2% to 7% range, they suggest. And the appeal is twofold. You get the regular dividend income plus the potential for the stock price itself to grow over time.
Right. Capital appreciation.
Yeah. Investopedia recommends focusing on stable companies with a track record of paying dividends, diversifying your holdings, and maybe looking into ETFs focused on dividend aristocrats.
Dividend aristocrats.
Yeah, those are companies that have consistently increased their dividends for at least 25 years straight, a sign of stability.
Okay, interesting term. We also saw peer-to-peer lending mentioned. So lending money directly to people or businesses online.
Precisely. The attraction there is potentially earning higher interest than a savings account, but you have to be aware of the higher risk of default compared to, say, an insured bank deposit.
Right. It's not FDIC insured.
No. Then there are index funds. These have become super popular.
Yeah, a way to buy the whole market, essentially. What's the passive income aspect there?
Well, it comes from two places. First, dividends paid by the companies in the index. Second, capital gains if the fund's value goes up and you eventually sell shares. Historically, broad market index funds have returned, somewhere between 7% and maybe 20% or more annually, depending heavily on the market and time frame.
And the big advantages.
Broad diversification, usually very low fees, low expense ratios, and it's simple. You're just tracking a market segment.
Okay. Moving into digital products and content. Investopedia rates this as medium potential. creating an online course that comes up a lot.
It does. And platforms like Udemy make it pretty accessible now for people to share their expertise. The big draw is scalability, right? Once you create a good course, you can sell it over and over with little extra effort per student. It lets you leverage your knowledge, maybe build a reputation.
But there's always a but.
Yeah. It takes a lot of upfront time to create a really good, engaging course. And the online learning space is crowded. You need effective marketing to get noticed.
Right. What about automated drop shipping? Selling stuff online without holding inventory?
Correct. Startup costs can be low, and the fulfillment is handled by suppliers, so it can be quite hands-off once it's running smoothly. You can offer lots of products without needing warehouse space.
Okay, sounds appealing. Downsides?
Well, profit margins can be thin. You're really dependent on your suppliers for quality and reliability, and e-commerce generally is super competitive.
Yeah, makes sense. Then there's YouTube. Uploading content to YouTube. Everyone wants to be a YouTuber, it seems.
Well, the potential to reach a huge audience and earn through ads and sponsorships is there for sure. But building a successful channel, that takes serious time, consistency, good content, especially early on. And you're kind of at the mercy of the YouTube algorithm, which can change. Competition is fierce. Earnings per 1,000 views vary a lot. Maybe $1 to $5 is typical.
So not instant riches, usually. What about creating an app? That sounds like it could be big if the idea hits.
Absolutely. If you create an app that solves a real problem or is really engaging, the potential for recurring revenue, maybe through subscriptions or sales, is significant. But development costs can be high. And getting visibility in those packed app stores, that takes ongoing effort, marketing, updates. It's tough.
Investopedia also mentioned AI-backed tools and apps specifically, like language learning tools using AI.
Yeah, that's an emerging area. Things that offer personalized experiences. Distribution via app stores is straightforward. But again, it's a fast-moving field, lots of competition popping up.
Okay, let's look at the creative and licensing category. Low-medium potential, according to Investopedia. Designing custom products like T-shirts, mugs.
Yeah, using platforms like Redbubble. They handle the printing, shipping. You just provide the designs. It's scalable, lets you be creative, build a brand maybe. Market saturation, lots of competition. You really need good designs and good marketing to make decent sales. Earnings per item might be anywhere from a few bucks to maybe $50.
Right. Affiliate marketing is another one people talk about. Promoting other companies' stuff for a commission.
Correct. The trick here is picking products that are actually good and relevant to your audience. You need to build trust, and you need to drive traffic, get people clicking your links. It can be competitive, too.
Makes sense. Selling stock photos is on the list, too, if you're good with a camera.
It's an option, yeah. The barrier to entry isn't super high if you have the gear and skill. Popular photos can generate ongoing income from downloads, but highly competitive. And the royalties per sale can be tiny, sometimes pennies, maybe a couple of dollars. No guarantees anyone will buy your photos.
Okay. Licensing your music, another one for creatives. And then a more unusual one, advertising on your car.
Yeah, companies like Rapify pay you to wrap your car in ads. Once the wrap is on, it's minimal effort for you. Usually no upfront cost. Earnings might be $100 to $400 a month, depending on the campaign and how much you drive.
Oh, interesting. Okay, final category, retail and physical products. Potential here ranges from low to high. Flipping retail products, buy low, sell high online.
Classic side hustle. Flexible, relatively low startup costs. Income varies wildly. Could be a few $100 a month, could be thousands. Depends what you flip, how good you are at sourcing, and market demand.
Then creating an e-commerce subscription box. Curated products delivered regularly.
Yeah, that has the appeal of recurring revenue, predictable income from subscribers. But you've got logistics, shipping costs, sourcing good products consistently, managing inventory, and that market's getting crowded too.
True. And last but not least, the old school buying a vending machine.
It is. But profitability really hinges on location, location, location.
Right.
Plus, you have ongoing work. Maintenance, restocking, collecting cash. If it's snacks or drinks, managing expiration dates is key too.
Wow. Okay, that's quite the tour through 25 different ideas.
Yeah.
It's clear there's a huge range depending on, what resources you have, what you're interested in. Now, let's pivot a bit. Let's talk about the mindset behind making these things work. This is where Rich Dad, Poor Dad really comes in.
Absolutely. I mean, a core idea in that book is shifting how you think. Moving away from just working for money towards strategically building assets that generate income for you. The book hammers home the importance of financial education, understanding the difference between an asset and a liability.
Right. Remind us of that definition from the book.
Simple, but powerful. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. The whole strategy is about acquiring income-generating assets. So that online course we talked about, once it's built and selling, that's an asset in this framework.
Right. So your own house, which people often think of as their biggest asset in the rich dad, poor dad view, if the mortgage, taxes, upkeep cost more than any income it generates, it's actually functioning as a liability.
Precisely. The book really pushes for an entrepreneurial mindset, looking for opportunities, thinking ahead, challenging conventional wisdom about money.
Right.
It also tackles the mental blocks, fear of losing money, cynicism. The authors point out, look, even rich people lose money sometimes, but they learn, they keep investing.
It also stresses just basic financial literacy, doesn't it? Understanding cash flow, budgeting, reading financial statements. It's not just about the idea, but the numbers behind it.
Exactly. It's about financial intelligence and
Yeah.
taking calculated risks, viewing setbacks not as failures, but as learning opportunities, chances to innovate, setting clear goals, breaking them down into steps you can actually take. That's crucial too. Plus that commitment to always be learning, adapting as things change.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad also makes a point about the difference between being an employee and a business owner, particularly with taxes. How does that fit in?
Well, it highlights how business owners, especially with a corporate structure, often have tax advantages. The pattern can be earn, spend, or reinvest in the business, then pay taxes on what's left.
Versus employees who earns, pay taxes immediately, then spend what's left.
Right. And related to passive income, investing in businesses where you're not actively involved day to day, where your role is mainly financial, can be a path. But again, as Investopedia noted with the IRS rules, you need to be aware of that material participation test to see if it truly counts as passive for tax reasons.
Okay, now we should inject some realism here too. Investopedia warns against get-rich-quick schemes, which is always good advice.
Always.
And Rich Dad, Poor Dad, while really influential, isn't without its critics, is it?
No, it's faced criticism. Some argue it's a bit vague, lacks concrete how-to steps, maybe oversimplifies things. It's often seen more as a motivational book, great for shifting your mindset, rather than a detailed financial plan.
Right. And it's always smart to be wary of financial advice where the advisor might profit from selling you specific products.
Absolutely. Potential conflicts of interest are always something to watch for.
Okay. So as we start to wrap this up, we've covered a lot of ground. A really diverse range of passive income possibilities, from physical things like real estate to digital products, investments, even creative stuff.
And I think the big takeaway is, while we call it passive, most of these things need real upfront effort. Strategic planning, initial investment of time or money, and then ongoing monitoring too.
Yeah, the passive part often comes later, if at all. It seems like building these income streams really relies on developing that entrepreneurial mindset we talked about, prioritizing your financial education, really getting that asset versus liability distinction, and being willing to take some calculated risks.
Which really brings us to the final question for you, the listener. Thinking about your own skills, your interests, your tolerance for risk, which of these ideas we discussed today kind of sparked something for you?
Yeah, what's this one small concrete step you could maybe take this week or this month just to explore one of these ideas a little further?
Because sometimes just thinking about how a small shift in your mindset about money could open up completely new financial possibilities down the road, that's a powerful exercise in itself.